The soft glow of gallery lights illuminated the carefully curated paintings as Emma Rosewood moved gracefully through the Metropolitan Art Gallery's main exhibition hall. Her emerald green dress complemented her auburn hair, which was elegantly swept into a sophisticated style. At 26, Emma possessed a natural poise that commanded attention without seeking it. Her keen hazel eyes reflected both intelligence and warmth as she discussed the intricacies of Renaissance art with potential buyers. The gallery lights cast a gentle shimmer over the masterpieces, but all eyes were drawn to something or someone far more captivating. Who was the black woman in the emerald green dress, moving through the exhibition hall as if she belonged to another time? At just 26, Emma Rosewood had the kind of effortless grace that made people pause mid-sentence. Her auburn hair, styled with quiet precision, framed a face that held both curiosity and calm authority. And those hazel eyes, sharp, warm, observant, seemed to read more than just brushstrokes as she spoke about Renaissance art with a confidence that left seasoned collectors leaning in just a little closer. Who was she, really? And what secrets lay behind that poised demeanor? The evening's charity auction was drawing the city's elite, their designer gowns and tailored tuxedos creating a sea of refined elegance. Emma had organized this event to raise funds for arts education in underprivileged schools, a cause close to her heart. She believed art had the power to transform lives, just as it had transformed hers during a difficult childhood when her single mother struggled to make ends meet. Miss Rosewood addressed Victoria Sterling, the gallery owner, who approached with her characteristic air of authority. "I'd like you to meet one of our most generous donors." Beside her stood a man who immediately captured Emma's attention. Though she tried to maintain her professional demeanor, Sebastian Blackwood stood with quiet confidence, his dark hair perfectly styled and his deep blue eyes holding an intensity that seemed to see beyond surface appearances. At 32, he had built a technology empire from nothing, but tonight he wore his wealth with understated elegance in a classic black tuxedo. What struck Emma most wasn't his obvious success or devastating good looks, but the way he listened intently when others spoke, as if their words truly mattered to him. "Mr. Blackwood has expressed particular interest in our contemporary collection," Victoria continued, though her tone suggested this introduction served multiple purposes. Sebastian extended his hand to Emma, and she felt an unexpected spark of electricity when their fingers touched. "Miss Rosewood," Sebastian said, his voice warm and genuinely pleased, "I've heard remarkable things about your curatorial work. The way you've arranged this exhibition creates a dialogue between centuries of artistic expression." His comment revealed he had done more than casual research, understanding the deliberate flow she had crafted through the gallery spaces. Emma found herself momentarily speechless, not because of his striking appearance or obvious wealth, but because he had noticed the subtle connection she had worked months to perfect. "Thank you," she replied, her usual composure returning. "Art should tell a story, even when the pieces are separated by hundreds of years. Each placement is intentional, like the Monet position to catch the natural light from the east windows," Sebastian observed, gesturing toward a corner where morning sunlight would illuminate the impressionist masterpiece. The changing light throughout the day must create an entirely different viewing experience. This level of attention to detail surprised Emma. Most wealthy collectors she encountered focused on investment potential or social status rather than artistic merit. "You've clearly spent time studying the layout," she said, genuine appreciation creeping into her voice. "I believe in understanding what I'm supporting," Sebastian replied simply. "Your program bringing art education to inner-city schools resonates with me. I grew up in neighborhoods where such opportunities didn't exist." This admission revealed a vulnerability that contrasted sharply with his polished exterior. As the evening progressed, Emma found herself drawn into conversations with Sebastian that went far beyond typical gallery small talk. While other guests discussed stock portfolios and vacation homes, Sebastian asked thoughtful questions about her curatorial philosophy and the stories behind individual pieces. When a particularly pretentious collector made dismissive comments about modern art, Sebastian quietly defended the emotional validity of abstract expression in a way that revealed both knowledge and genuine appreciation. "You're not what I expected," Emma admitted during a quiet moment as they stood before a dramatic landscape painting. The auction wouldn't begin for another hour, giving them time to explore the gallery together. "What did you expect?" Sebastian asked, genuinely curious rather than offended. He had learned that people often formed opinions about him based on magazine articles and gossip columns rather than personal interaction. Emma considered her words carefully. "Someone more focused on the business aspects, I suppose. Most major donors want to discuss tax benefits and naming rights rather than artistic technique and emotional impact." She paused, studying his expression. "You actually care about the art itself, not just the prestige of owning it." "Art has always been my escape," Sebastian confessed, surprising himself with his honesty. "During the years I was building my company, working 18-hour days and sleeping in my office, I would visit museums to remember there was beauty in the world beyond quarterly reports and board meetings." His voice carried a weariness that money couldn't cure. Emma felt her carefully maintained professional distance beginning to waver. This wasn't the entitled playboy she had imagined based on society page photographs. "What draws you to art specifically?" she asked, genuinely wanting to understand this unexpected depth. "The honesty," Sebastian replied without hesitation. "A painting can't lie about what the artist was feeling. It's pure emotion translated into color and form." He turned to face her directly. "Your work here creates that same honesty. You don't just display art. You help people connect with the humanity behind each piece." The sincerity in his voice made Emma's heart skip unexpectedly. She had dedicated her career to making art accessible and meaningful, but few people understood the emotional labor involved in curatorial work. "That's exactly what I hope to achieve," she said softly. "Too many people are intimidated by art, thinking they need special knowledge to appreciate it, but emotional response is universal." Their conversation was interrupted by the gentle chiming that signaled the auction's beginning. As they moved toward the main hall, Sebastian touched Emma's arm lightly. "Would you sit with me during the bidding?" he asked. "I'd appreciate your insights on the pieces being offered." Emma hesitated, aware that sitting with Sebastian would be noticed by everyone present. The gallery's patrons loved gossip almost as much as they loved art, and her reputation for maintaining professional boundaries was well established. But something in his request felt genuine rather than calculated. "I should circulate among the other guests," she said diplomatically, though part of her wanted to accept his invitation. "Of course," Sebastian replied, understanding immediately. "Perhaps afterward you might join me for coffee? I'd love to continue our discussion about the connection between art and social responsibility." His invitation was carefully phrased to sound professional while carrying undertones of personal interest. As the auction proceeded, Emma found herself stealing glances at Sebastian from across the room. He bid thoughtfully rather than aggressively, clearly having researched each piece beforehand. When he won a contemporary sculpture by an emerging artist, Emma felt a warmth of approval. He wasn't just acquiring trophies. He was supporting the future of artistic expression. The evening's biggest surprise came when Sebastian stood to make an unscheduled announcement. "I'd like to pledge an additional donation to the arts education program," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the hushed room. "Not because my name will appear on a plaque, but because Ms. Rosewood has convinced me that art education isn't a luxury for privileged children. It's a necessity for all children to develop creativity and critical thinking." The applause was enthusiastic, but Emma barely heard it. She was focused on Sebastian's face, seeing the genuine passion behind his words. This wasn't a calculated publicity move. It was a man who had been moved to action by conviction. When the formal evening ended and guests began departing, Emma found herself alone with Sebastian in the now quiet gallery. The contrast between the earlier crowd and current stillness created an intimate atmosphere neither had anticipated. "Thank you for tonight," Emma said, her professional mask finally slipping to reveal her genuine gratitude. "Your support means more than you know, not just financially but philosophically. You understand why this work matters." Sebastian stepped closer, his eyes searching her face in the soft gallery lighting. "Thank you for helping me remember why I fell in love with art in the first place," he replied. Somewhere between building companies and attending board meetings, I had forgotten the pure joy of discovering something beautiful. The moment stretched between them, filled with possibility and mutual recognition. Emma realized that beneath Sebastian's wealth and success was a man seeking the same authenticity and connection that she valued above all else. For the first time in years, she felt herself genuinely attracted to someone, not despite their circumstances, but because of who they truly were beneath the surface. "That coffee invitation," Emma said quietly. "Is it still open?" The small cafe Sebastian had chosen surprised Emma with its understated charm. Instead of exclusive establishments she expected a billionaire to frequent, he had led her to a cozy bookshop cafe in Greenwich Village, where mismatched chairs surrounded wooden tables and the aroma of fresh coffee mingled with the scent of old books. The late hour meant they had the place almost to themselves, creating an atmosphere of intimate conversation. "This doesn't seem like your usual scene," Emma observed, settling into a comfortable armchair beside a window overlooking the quiet street. She had changed from her formal gallery attire into dark jeans and a soft cream sweater, her hair now flowing freely around her shoulders. Sebastian smiled, looking more relaxed than she had seen him all evening. He had also shed his formal appearance, trading his tuxedo for casual slacks and a navy button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up. "Most people assume I only frequent places with dress codes and wine lists longer than novels," he said, stirring his coffee thoughtfully. "But this is where I come when I need to think, to remember who I was before the money changed everything." Emma studied his face in the warm lamplight, noting the sincerity in his expression. "When did the money start changing things?" she asked gently, sensing this was important territory they were entering. "Gradually, then suddenly," Sebastian replied with a rueful laugh. "I started my first company in college, developing software to help libraries digitize their catalogs. It was supposed to be a small project to help underfunded institutions preserve knowledge. When it exploded into something worth millions, I thought I could handle the transition." He paused, looking out the window at the empty street. "But success brings its own complications. Suddenly, everyone wanted something from me, and I found myself questioning every relationship, every friendship." Emma felt a pang of recognition, though their circumstances were different. She understood the isolation that came with professional success. "I imagine it becomes difficult to trust people's motivations," she said softly. "Exactly," Sebastian said, his eyes meeting hers with gratitude for her understanding. "Dating became particularly challenging. I learned to recognize the signs early, women who researched my net worth before our first conversation, who seemed more interested in my credit cards than my thoughts." His voice carried old disappointment. "After a while, I stopped trying. It seemed easier to focus on work and avoid the complications entirely." Emma sipped her coffee, considering his words carefully. "But you asked me here tonight," she pointed out. "What made you take that risk again?" Sebastian leaned forward slightly, his gaze intense but gentle. "Because you looked at my donation tonight like it was the amount that mattered, not the dollar signs. Because you spent 20 minutes explaining the historical context of a painting to an elderly woman who couldn't afford to buy anything. Because when I mentioned growing up in rough neighborhoods, you didn't change the subject or look uncomfortable." He paused. "Because you see art the way I used to, before I forgot how to see beauty without calculating its market value." The honesty in his admission made Emma's heart race unexpectedly. She had built her own walls over the years, having learned painful lessons about men who saw her as either an intellectual trophy or a challenge to overcome. "I should probably tell you," she said carefully, "that I don't have the best track record with wealthy men." "Bad experiences?" Sebastian asked, though his tone suggested he already suspected the answer. Emma nodded, memories surfacing despite her attempts to keep them buried. "In graduate school, I dated someone from a prominent family. Richard seemed genuinely interested in my studies, my goals, my thoughts about art and culture." Her voice grew quieter. "It took me months to realize he saw our relationship as performance art for his social circle, the brilliant scholarship girl, who who could discuss Renaissance painters at dinner parties but could be dismissed when more important people needed his attention. Sebastian's jaw tightened with anger on her behalf. He sounds like an idiot who didn't deserve you. The worst part, Emma continued, appreciating his immediate defense of her, was how he made me question my own worth. He had this way of making me feel intellectually inferior while pretending to value my mind, like I was smart enough to be interesting but not smart enough to be an equal partner. She met Sebastian's gaze directly. I swore I wouldn't let anyone make me feel that way again. Good, Sebastian said firmly. You shouldn't. Your intelligence is obvious to anyone with eyes, and your passion for your work is inspiring. He paused, choosing his words carefully. I hope you know that my interest in you has nothing to do with proving anything to anyone. I'm here because talking with you tonight reminded me of who I used to be before I let success isolate me from authentic connections. The vulnerability in his admission touched something deep within Emma's carefully guarded heart. Who were you before? She asked softly. Sebastian smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his entire face. A kid who spent every weekend at the public library because it was quieter than home and because books were free entertainment. Someone who believed technology could solve real problems for real people. His voice grew thoughtful. I used to volunteer at community centers, teaching basic computer skills to adults who couldn't afford classes. It felt more meaningful than any business deal I've closed since. What stopped you? Emma asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. Time, initially. Then distance from that world. Success has a way of pulling you into circles where volunteer work becomes writing checks instead of showing up. Sebastian looked slightly ashamed. I told myself donations were more efficient than personal involvement, but honestly, I think I was afraid of being recognized, of people treating me differently. Emma felt her professional barriers continuing to dissolve as she recognized the genuine regret in his voice. It's not too late to reconnect with that part of yourself, she said gently. The arts education program we discussed tonight could use hands-on volunteers, not just financial support. Sebastian's eyes lit up with interest. What kind of hands-on involvement? Teaching kids basic digital art techniques, helping them create online portfolios of their work, showing them how technology and creativity can work together. Emma found herself leaning forward enthusiastically. Most of these children have never had access to professional-grade software or someone who understands both the technical and artistic sides. I'd love to be involved, Sebastian said immediately, his excitement genuine and infectious. When can we start? The ease with which he embraced the opportunity surprised Emma. Most wealthy donors wanted elegant galas and recognition ceremonies, not the messy reality of working with underprivileged teenagers in overcrowded classrooms. You're serious? She asked. Completely serious, Sebastian confirmed. I've been looking for ways to make my success feel meaningful again. This sounds perfect. He paused, studying her expression. Unless you'd prefer to keep your professional and personal lives completely separate. I understand if working together would complicate things. Emma considered this carefully. Professional wisdom dictated maintaining clear boundaries. But something about Sebastian's genuine enthusiasm and obvious respect for her work made the prospect of collaboration appealing rather than threatening. I think, she said slowly, that it might be nice to work with someone who shares my passion for the cause rather than just writing checks and disappearing. Does this mean you're willing to see me again? Sebastian asked, his vulnerability showing despite his casual tone. Emma felt herself smiling genuinely for the first time in months. I think I like that very much. They talked until the cafe closed, their conversation flowing naturally from art to childhood memories to dreams for the future. Sebastian shared stories of learning to code on an ancient computer his mother bought secondhand, while Emma described growing up in her mother's flower shop and learning to see beauty in simple arrangements of everyday blooms. When Sebastian walked Emma to her car, the night air was crisp and clear, the city quieter than either was used to experiencing. Thank you for tonight, he said as they reached her modest sedan. For the first time in years, I feel like someone sees me as more than a bank account with opinions. Emma turned to face him, struck by how different he looked from the polished businessman she had met hours earlier. Thank you for proving that not all successful men are threatened by intelligent women, she replied softly. The moment stretched between them, filled with possibility and mutual attraction. Sebastian reached out to tuck a strand of hair behind Emma's ear, his touch gentle and respectful. "May I call you tomorrow?" he asked. "I'd like that," Emma replied, her heart racing at the simple contact. As she drove home through the empty streets, Emma reflected on the evening's unexpected developments. For the first time since Richard's betrayal, she found herself cautiously optimistic about the possibility of genuine connection with someone. Sebastian's wealth still made her nervous, but his authentic personality and shared values created a foundation she hadn't expected to find. Meanwhile, Sebastian stood in the cafe's doorway long after Emma's taillights disappeared, feeling more hopeful about the future than he had in years. For once, he had met someone who valued his thoughts over his portfolio, someone whose intelligence and passion challenged him to be better rather than simply richer. Neither fully understood yet how profoundly this meeting would change their lives, but both sensed they had discovered something rare and worth pursuing carefully. 3 weeks after their first coffee date, Emma found herself looking forward to Sebastian's calls with an anticipation that both thrilled and worried her. Their relationship had developed naturally through a series of thoughtful gestures and meaningful conversations that consistently surprised her with their depth and authenticity. True to his word, Sebastian had begun volunteering at the arts education program, spending Saturday mornings teaching digital design to teenagers who initially viewed him with suspicion that gradually melted into genuine respect. Emma watched from across the classroom as he patiently explained software techniques, his expensive clothes traded for jeans and old sneakers that wouldn't intimidate the kids. "Miss Emma," called out Destiny, a 15-year-old with natural artistic talent and a sharp tongue that kept most adults at a distance, "your boyfriend actually knows what he's talking about. My portfolio looks professional now." Emma felt her cheeks warm at the word boyfriend, though she and Sebastian hadn't officially defined their relationship. "Mr. Blackwood has extensive experience with technology," she replied diplomatically, though she couldn't hide her smile. "Plus, he brings good snacks," added Marcus, another student who had initially been skeptical of Sebastian's presence. "And he doesn't talk down to us like we're stupid." These observations pleased Emma more than elaborate gifts or expensive dinners could have. Sebastian's natural ease with the teenagers and his obvious investment in their success revealed character traits that couldn't be faked or bought. After class, as they walked to their cars together, Sebastian brought up something that had been on his mind. "Emma, there's something I should tell you about next weekend," he began, his tone suggesting nervous anticipation. Emma looked up at him curiously. They had planned to visit a new exhibition at the Museum of Modern Art, something she had been looking forward to all week. "My father is hosting his annual charity gala," Sebastian continued. "It's a significant social event, very formal, lots of media attention. I usually attend alone or skip it entirely, but this year—" He paused, running his hand through his hair nervously. "I'd like you to come with me as my date." The request hung in the air between them, loaded with implications they both understood. Attending such an event together would be a public declaration of their relationship, subjecting Emma to scrutiny she had never experienced. "Sebastian," Emma said carefully, "that sounds like a very high-profile event. Are you sure you want to deal with questions about who I am and why you're with me?" Sebastian stopped walking and turned to face her fully. "Emma, I'm proud to be with you. You're intelligent, passionate, beautiful, and kind. If other people can't see those qualities, that says something about them, not about you." His voice grew more intense. "I understand if you're not ready for that kind of public attention, but please don't assume you're not worthy of it." Emma felt her heart swell at his words, but practical concerns remained. "I don't exactly have gala-appropriate attire," she said with a small laugh. "And I'm not sure I know how to navigate those social circles." "The attire is easily solved," Sebastian said dismissively. "As for the social navigation, just be yourself. Anyone worth knowing will appreciate your authenticity, and anyone who doesn't isn't worth our time." That evening, Emma called her mother for advice, something she did when facing major life decisions. Helen Rosewood had raised Emma alone after her father left when Emma was young, instilling in her daughter both strength and caution about trusting others. "He wants to take you to a society gala?" Helen asked after Emma explained the situation. "That's quite a statement, sweetheart." "No, Mom, that's what worries me. What if I don't fit in? What if people think I'm only with him for his money?" Emma's insecurities bubbled to the surface. "Emma," her mother said firmly, "you've never cared about fitting in with the wrong people before. Don't start now. The question isn't whether you're good enough for his world. It's whether his world is good enough for you." Her mother's words echoed in Emma's mind as she prepared for the gala the following weekend. Sebastian had arranged for a personal stylist to help her select an appropriate gown, a process that initially made Emma uncomfortable until she realized the stylist, Maria, was genuinely interested in finding something that reflected Emma's personality rather than transforming her into someone else. The dress they selected was elegant without being ostentatious, a midnight blue gown with clean lines and subtle beading that caught the light when she moved. Emma felt beautiful but still recognizably herself when she looked in the mirror. Sebastian's reaction when he picked her up confirmed she had made the right choice. His eyes widened with genuine appreciation, and his smile was soft and admiring. "You look absolutely stunning," he said, offering her his arm. "But more importantly, you look like you." The gala was held at the Metropolitan Opera House. Its grand architecture provided a dramatic backdrop for an evening of champagne, classical music, and carefully orchestrated social interaction. Emma felt initially overwhelmed by the sheer scale of wealth and influence around her, but Sebastian's steady presence at her side helped her navigate conversations with grace. "Sebastian, darling," called a voice from across the reception area. A perfectly polished woman in her 50s approached them with the confident stride of someone accustomed to commanding attention. "I was beginning to think you'd sworn off social events entirely." "Victoria," Sebastian replied with polite warmth. "I'd like you to meet Emma Rosewood." "Emma, this is Victoria Ashworth, one of the gala's organizing committee members." Victoria's assessing gaze swept over Emma with the efficiency of a scanner, clearly cataloging details for future reference. "Rosewood," she mused. "Are you related to the Connecticut Rosewoods?" "No," Emma replied with a pleasant smile. "I'm related to the Brooklyn Rosewoods. My mother owns a flower shop." The slight tightening around Victoria's eyes suggested this wasn't the pedigree she had expected, but before she could respond, Sebastian smoothly intervened. "Emma is the senior curator at the Metropolitan Art Gallery. She organized the charity auction that raised over $2 million for arts education last month." "How interesting," Victoria said, though her tone suggested otherwise. "And how did you two meet?" "At Emma's auction," Sebastian replied, his voice carrying quiet pride. "She convinced me that supporting arts education was more important than acquiring another piece for my personal collection." Emma appreciated how Sebastian presented their meeting, emphasizing her professional accomplishments rather than downplaying them. Throughout the evening, she noticed he consistently introduced her credentials before mentioning their relationship, ensuring people understood she was present as an accomplished professional, not merely as his companion. The evening's most challenging moment came during dinner when Emma found herself seated next to Robert Ashworth, Victoria's husband and a prominent investment banker known for his conservative views and sharp tongue. "So, Miss Rosewood," Robert said after several glasses of wine had loosened his usual discretion, "what's your strategy for landing one of the city's most eligible bachelors? Quite an upgrade from a flower shop, I imagine." The comment hung in the air like a slap, drawing the attention of nearby diners. Emma felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment and anger, but before she could formulate a response, Sebastian's voice cut through the tension. "Robert," Sebastian said, his tone dangerously quiet, "I think you've misunderstood something fundamental about my relationship with Emma." He turned to face the older man directly. "I'm the one who pursued her, not the other way around, and I consider myself incredibly fortunate that someone of her intelligence and integrity was willing to give me a chance." The rebuke was delivered with such controlled intensity that Robert actually flinched. Around the table, other guests studied their plates with sudden fascination, clearly uncomfortable with the confrontation. "Furthermore," Sebastian continued, "Emma's background is something to be proud of, not ashamed of. She earned her position through talent and hard work, not inherited connections or family money. His gaze swept the table, challenging anyone to disagree. Perhaps if more people had her work ethic and genuine concern for others, society events like this would focus on actual charitable impact rather than social positioning. The silence that followed was deafening. Then unexpectedly, applause began from a nearby table where a group of younger professionals had been listening. The clapping spread throughout the dining room, creating an awkward but unmistakable show of support for Sebastian's words. Emma felt tears prick her eyes, not from embarrassment, but from gratitude for Sebastian's fierce defense of her dignity. No one had ever stood up for her so publicly and uncompromisingly. Later, as they walked through Central Park after leaving the gala early, Emma finally found the words for what she was feeling. "Thank you," she said simply, "for what you said in there." Sebastian stopped walking and took her hands in his. "Emma, I need you to understand something," he said, his voice intense with emotion. "I don't want you to feel grateful for basic respect and decency. You deserve to be valued for who you are, not tolerated because of who you're with." Emma looked up at him, seeing the moonlight reflected in his eyes and feeling her last defenses crumble. "I think I'm falling in love with you," she admitted softly, the words escaping before she could stop them. Sebastian's face transformed with joy and relief. "Thank God," he breathed, pulling her closer. "Because I've been in love with you since that first night when you explained the emotional honesty of art. I was just afraid you'd think it was too soon or that my feelings weren't genuine." Their first kiss happened naturally, surrounded by the quiet beauty of the park with the city lights twinkling around them. It was tender and passionate, filled with the promise of a future neither had dared to imagine weeks earlier. As they held each other in the peaceful darkness, Emma realized that Sebastian had seen through all her careful defenses to understand the woman beneath. He valued her mind, respected her work, and cherished her heart without trying to change any essential part of who she was. "What happens now?" Emma asked, her head resting against his chest as they swayed slightly to music only they could hear. "Now," Sebastian said, pressing a kiss to the top of her head, "we build something beautiful together. No more walls, no more pretenses, just two people who found each other against all odds." Emma smiled, feeling truly secure in love for the first time in her life. She had discovered that while her charm might turn heads everywhere, Sebastian was the only one who had taken the time to see and cherish her soul. And in doing so, he had revealed his own vulnerable, generous, and completely devoted side to the extraordinary woman in his arms. Their love had begun at an art auction, but what they created together would outshine any masterpiece ever hung in a gallery, vibrant, enduring, and alive. It wasn't just a romance. It was a journey of building something truly priceless, a relationship grounded in mutual respect, shared values, and a profound connection powerful enough to transcend social class and defy every expectation.